Keep moving!
Covering fire, watch the tracers!
Go! Move it faster, we're exposed here!
Secure that beam now!
All right, men, heave!
January 17th, 1945. A gray dawn clings to the shattered landscapes of Western Germany. Muddy rivers carve through fields battered by months of artillery fire. Smoke rises from distant villages, curling like ghostly fingers into the cold winter air. The distant rumble of tanks shakes the ground, mingling with the sharp staccato of rifle fire. On the banks of the Roer River, American soldiers huddle behind battered embankments. Their breath fogs in the frigid air, eyes fixed on the murky waters. Across the river, German forces peer through the haze, confident in the natural barrier that has stalled armies for centuries. Then, quietly, engineers move into position. Strange, modular shapes glint faintly under the smoke. Men tighten straps, lift beams, and, under the crackling threat of enemy fire, begin assembling what seems impossible: portable bridges. The river, once an obstacle that would claim hundreds of lives, starts to tremble under human ingenuity. For the German soldiers watching from across the river, disbelief flashes across their faces. The Americans are bringing the battlefield to them, literally bridging the gap under fire. The question lingers in the air. Could this invention change the course of the fight? By late 1944, the momentum of World War II had decisively shifted in favor of the Allies. After the success of the Normandy landings in June, the U.S. and British armies had pushed German forces back across France, liberating cities and towns that had suffered under occupation for 4 long years. The winter of 1944 to 1945, however, brought new challenges. Rivers and marshlands, frozen in parts and swollen in others, formed natural barriers that slowed the advance of mechanized divisions. Bridges had been destroyed, roads rendered impassable, and German forces had entrenched themselves along strategic defensive lines. For the U.S. Army, logistics had become as decisive as combat. Infantry could cross a river on foot, but armored divisions and artillery required solid, reliable bridges. Without them, advances would stall, giving the Germans precious time to regroup, reinforce, and counterattack. Standard pontoon bridges were heavy, slow to assemble, and vulnerable to artillery fire. Engineers had to innovate, or risk halting the offensive altogether. Enter the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. These units were tasked not only with constructing roads, bridges, and fortifications, but also with doing so under fire. Soldiers who specialized in battlefield engineering had trained for months, often under harsh conditions, learning to assemble portable bridge sections, move pontoons into position, and manage weight distribution for tanks and heavy vehicles. Their work required precision, courage, and an almost surgical coordination between units under constant threat. Meanwhile, German forces were acutely aware of the Allies' reliance on engineering solutions. Defensive positions were carefully planned along rivers like the Roer, the Rhine, and the Meuse. Mines were laid along riverbanks. Artillery pieces aimed to sweep bridges, and machine gun nests covered the approaches. Commanders believed that these natural and man-made barriers would buy them time to fortify, to counterattack, and to inflict maximum casualties on advancing troops. The stakes were high. For American commanders, rapid river crossings were more than tactical necessities. They were pivotal to sustaining the momentum of the Western offensive. Each delay risked allowing the Germans to regroup, potentially prolonging the war and increasing casualties. Every soldier who crossed a river under fire was contributing not just to the immediate battle, but to the broader strategy of liberating Europe. In this tense environment, The development of portable bridges represented a leap in battlefield innovation. Lightweight, modular, and designed for rapid assembly. These bridges could be deployed by small teams under enemy fire, effectively turning a natural defensive obstacle into a tactical opportunity. The concept was simple in theory, yet the execution demanded extraordinary coordination. Soldiers needed to transport bridge sections through mud and snow, align them precisely across turbulent currents, and secure them while under the threat of machine gun fire or artillery shells. The human element was equally critical. Soldiers on both sides experienced a mix of fear and awe. American engineers approached each crossing with careful discipline, aware that a single mistake could cost lives. German defenders, observing these operations, often found themselves confounded by the audacity and efficiency of the attackers. They had prepared for delays, for conventional river crossing strategies, yet the Americans were attempting what seemed impossible, bridging wide rivers in minutes, under direct fire, and with full mechanized support following immediately behind. This convergence of engineering skill, tactical necessity, and battlefield pressure set the stage for moments of near-miraculous innovation. By examining the rivers of Western Germany, the fortified positions of German defenders, and the meticulous preparation of U.S. engineering units, one can begin to understand why portable bridges would become a defining element of late-war Allied operations. As the U.S. Army approached the Roer River in January 1945, both sides were acutely aware that the next few days could alter the course of local engagements. American commanders trusted in the ingenuity of their engineers. German soldiers clung to the hope that natural defenses and entrenched firepower would hold the line. The stage was set for an extraordinary demonstration of human courage, ingenuity, and a relentless march of Allied strategy, a moment that would leave German soldiers stunned and alter the flow of combat along the riverbanks. The challenge of crossing the Roer River demanded more than brute force. It required ingenuity. Standard bridge-laying techniques, developed during the early years of the war, had proven slow and vulnerable. Engineers had to work quickly, often under enemy fire, assembling cumbersome pontoons or timber structures that could take hours to complete. Every minute spent at the riverbank exposed troops to artillery, sniper fire, and mines. A delay of even a few hours could mean the difference between success and disaster. In response, U.S. Army engineers had refined the concept of portable bridges. These were not the heavy, stationary structures of the past. Designed for speed and mobility, they consisted of modular sections that could be carried by small teams and rapidly assembled on site. Lightweight steel, reinforced panels, and carefully engineered joints allowed these bridges to support tanks, jeeps, and artillery while being surprisingly compact for transport. Some designs could be launched directly into the water and expanded across the river in a matter of minutes. Training exercises had proven that a well-coordinated team could deploy a bridge under pressure, though never before under direct enemy fire at scale. The preparation was meticulous. Engineers conducted reconnaissance to identify the best crossing points, calculating river currents, bank conditions, and potential German defensive positions. They coordinated with infantry and armored units, ensuring that once the bridge was in place, troops could immediately advance to exploit the crossing. Communication had to be flawless. A misstep could send a bridge collapsing into the cold waters, trapping men and vehicles in a deadly bottleneck. On the German side, commanders relied on intelligence reports and historical precedent to predict Allied movements. Rivers like the Roer were natural choke points, and German fortifications took full advantage of this. Mines, artillery, and machine guns were concentrated along the banks. Engineers and infantry had drilled extensively on countering conventional crossings. Yet, The concept of portable bridges, lightweight, fast, and able to carry heavy vehicles, was unprecedented. Few German soldiers could have anticipated the speed and audacity of the American approach. The winter of 1945 added another layer of difficulty. Freezing temperatures stiffened metal and numbed fingers, while icy currents threatened to sweep away equipment or soldiers who slipped. Mud, churned by artillery and heavy vehicle movement, bogged down transport and slowed movement. Yet these obstacles also provided cover. Smoke from burning villages, morning fog, and the muffling effect of snowfall offered engineers critical concealment, allowing them to approach the riverbanks with a measure of stealth. By the time the U.S. forces reached the river, the pieces were in place. Engineers stood ready, bridge sections lined along the banks, tools in hand, eyes scanning the far side for German observation posts. Infantry units crouched nearby, ready to provide covering fire. Tanks rumbled in the distance, prepared to cross the moment the bridge was secure. Every man knew the stakes. Success meant maintaining the momentum of the Allied advance. Failure could result in significant casualties and a temporary halt to the offensive. The stage was set for a moment that combined technical mastery, precise coordination, and raw courage. What the Germans would witness in the coming hours: a portable bridge sliding across the water, assembled and operational under fire, would challenge their understanding of battlefield engineering. It was an innovation born of necessity, honed in training, and about to be tested under the most dangerous conditions of all: active combat. With the preparation complete and both sides bracing for confrontation, the focus shifted from planning to execution. The river, once a formidable barrier, was about to become a proving ground for human ingenuity under the pressure of war, a moment that would leave German soldiers in disbelief and shape the battles to come. The men tasked with deploying the portable bridges were ordinary soldiers faced with extraordinary circumstances. Engineers were trained for precision, but nothing in training fully prepared them for the reality of assembling a bridge under enemy fire. Cold bit through their uniforms, mud clung to boots, and the roar of artillery threatened to disorient and panic even the most disciplined. Yet, there was a quiet intensity to their movements. Each bolt tightened, each section lifted, carried with a combination of muscle memory and sheer determination. Fear was constant, but it was paired with a rare focus. Soldiers whispered brief instructions to each other over the din of combat, gestures replacing words when gunfire drowned out speech. Exhaustion pressed heavily on their shoulders, but adrenaline and the knowledge of their critical role kept them moving. Onlookers, both allies and enemies, could see the strain etched into faces, the sweat glistening on furrowed brows, the trembling hands steadying long enough to perform exacting tasks. For these men, success was survival, not just for themselves, but for the units depending on the bridge to carry tanks, artillery, and infantry across the river. The human cost of innovation was immediate. Every crossing carried the risk of injury or death. Yet these engineers accepted the danger with quiet resolve. Their courage was not the dramatic heroism of a battlefield story. It was methodical, silent, and precise, born of countless drills and a deep sense of responsibility. Crossing a river under fire was one of the most perilous operations in modern warfare. Rivers naturally favor defenders. Strong currents, soft banks, and narrow crossing points funnel attackers into predictable paths. For the Germans, this meant their machine guns and artillery could concentrate fire efficiently. Tanks and infantry were vulnerable until they reached solid ground on the far bank. Historically, many assaults had stalled at rivers, leaving attackers exposed and depleted. The introduction of portable bridges fundamentally changed this tactical equation. Suddenly, American forces could establish a crossing point rapidly, bypassing the traditional vulnerabilities of river assaults. Commanders could maintain the momentum of an advance, using the river itself as a corridor rather than an obstacle. Artillery positions intended to protect the banks became less effective, as bridges were deployed in unpredictable locations, often under smoke cover or early morning fog. The tactical implications extended beyond a single river. Engineers' ability to construct bridges quickly meant entire divisions could move more fluidly across Europe's many waterways. Supply lines remained intact. Armored units could flank entrenched positions, and German defensive strategies had to adapt to a threat that seemed to render natural barriers almost irrelevant. The success of these operations depended not only on engineers' skill, but on decisive leadership. Commanders had to trust that their men could execute complex, high-risk maneuvers under fire. Orders were precise. Timing, location, and coordination with covering units were critical. Hesitation or miscommunication could result in the loss of men and material. U.S. leaders demonstrated a blend of strategic foresight and battlefield pragmatism. They understood that traditional river crossings would stall the offensive and accepted the risk of innovation to gain an advantage. Officers inspected bridge assembly procedures personally, timing mock deployments and refining techniques. They communicated clearly, ensuring that every unit, engineers, infantry, and armored divisions, knew their role in the coordinated assault. On the German side, leadership expectations clashed with reality. Commanders had counted on rivers to slow the American advance, giving time to reinforce and reposition. The sudden appearance of portable bridges under fire challenged assumptions and forced rapid decision-making. Orders were issued to concentrate fire, redeploy troops, and attempt counterattacks. Yet many decisions were reactive rather than preemptive. The disparity in leadership confidence and initiative became apparent, highlighting how innovation and courage on one side could unsettle even well-prepared defenders. At the heart of this operation was an engineering breakthrough, the portable bridge. Unlike conventional pontoon bridges, these structures were designed for speed, flexibility, and strength. Lightweight steel panels interlocked with precision, forming a platform capable of supporting tanks, artillery, and supply vehicles. Some sections were collapsible, allowing soldiers to transport them across difficult terrain before assembling them at the riverbank. Others were designed to float, creating a bridge directly on the water surface. The genius of these designs lay not just in materials, but in deployment. Engineers could assemble the bridge in stages, with small teams handling individual segments. Rivets and locking mechanisms allowed for rapid connections, while counterweights and adjustable supports ensured stability in turbulent currents. The innovation transformed a natural barrier into a tactical tool, granting American forces the ability to control river crossings without waiting for heavy construction units or vulnerable pontoon deliveries. Moreover, the portable bridge was not a mere utility. It was a psychological weapon. Its very presence suggested a confidence and technological superiority that unsettled the enemy, signaling that American forces could overcome obstacles previously considered insurmountable. From the German perspective, the sudden deployment of portable bridges was disorienting. Soldiers entrenched along the riverbank expected a slow, predictable crossing, one they could target with machine guns, artillery, and mortars. Instead, they watched as Americans moved methodically under fire, assembling bridges with astonishing speed. Confusion quickly turned into disbelief. Officers relayed urgent orders to concentrate fire, but the precision and speed of the engineering units rendered many defensive measures ineffective. The Germans had trained to anticipate conventional tactics, pontoon bridges, ferries, or temporary forts. But this new method disrupted every assumption. Morale faltered. Even seasoned soldiers, accustomed to the chaos of war, found themselves unnerved by the audacity and efficiency of the Americans. Reports from German units later described the scene as surreal. Steel bridges appearing under smoke and gunfire, infantry and armor flowing across the river as though the natural obstacle did not exist. The psychological shock of witnessing the enemy overcome what should have been a formidable defensive advantage left lasting impressions, influencing subsequent engagements and tactical planning. The impact of portable bridges extended beyond tactics. It penetrated the minds of both attackers and defenders. 4 American soldiers, witnessing the bridge unfold under fire, reinforced trust in their engineering units and in their own mission. It boosted morale, proving that ingenuity and coordination could overcome even the most daunting challenges. Soldiers gained confidence not only in the hardware, but in the leadership that orchestrated its deployment. On the German side, the psychological toll was palpable. Defenders had relied on rivers as natural barriers, believing that these obstacles would slow or even halt the American advance. Watching the enemy neutralize that advantage created frustration and disbelief. Letters and diaries from German soldiers recount the shock of seeing armored vehicles cross rivers seemingly effortlessly, an image that contradicted every assumption about battlefield strategy and natural defenses. This psychological edge, though intangible, was as critical as the steel and timber of the bridges themselves. It demonstrated that innovation under pressure could influence the outcome of engagements before a single decisive firefight even began. Confidence, doubt, and morale became weapons in their own right, shaping decisions, movements, and the intensity of resistance. By exploring these angles, technological brilliance, enemy perception, and human psychology, the story of portable bridges emerges as more than a tale of engineering. It becomes a testament to the interplay between human courage, innovation, and the unpredictable effects of witnessing something unprecedented on the battlefield. January 17th, 1945. The Roer River lay shrouded in morning mist, its icy currents reflecting a dim, gray light. American engineers crouched along the bank, their breaths steaming in the cold air, eyes fixed on the far side where German defenders waited behind sandbags, machine guns, and artillery. Every man knew the stakes. This was more than a river crossing. It was a test of courage, coordination, and innovation under fire. At 7:15, the first sections of the portable bridge were lifted into position. Engineers moved with precision, synchronizing every motion. A slight misalignment could mean disaster. A drop beam could send soldiers or equipment into the freezing water. Yet, despite the cacophony of artillery shells exploding nearby and machine gun fire streaking the air, the bridge began to take shape. German defenders opened fire, trying to disrupt the operation. Bullets ricocheted off steel panels, and small explosions sent mud and water spraying into the air. One shell landed mere meters from the engineers, knocking a section sideways, but the team adjusted swiftly, locking the panels into place before resuming their advance. The rhythm of construction was punctuated by shouts and orders, each command driving the operation forward with relentless precision. Behind engineers, infantry units provided covering fire. Riflemen and machine gunners engaged the Germans across the riverbank, creating suppressive fire that allowed bridge teams to work with slightly reduced risk. Tanks lurked just beyond the fog, engines idling, waiting for the moment the bridge would bear their weight. Every movement had been timed and rehearsed. Hesitation could cost lives, delay the crossing, and potentially allow German forces to regroup. By 7:45, the first bridge segment was fully in place. Soldiers tested its stability, inching forward cautiously. The river, once an obstacle that had halted countless advances, now offered a pathway across. Engineers continued to assemble additional sections downstream, expanding the crossing points and allowing multiple units to prepare for deployment simultaneously. German soldiers, initially confident in the natural barrier and defensive positions, watched in disbelief. Their carefully calculated fire had failed to halt the operation. Officers barked orders, redirecting artillery and infantry to target the bridge, but each adjustment came too late. The Americans' methodical approach, combined with speed and precision, had outmatched both preparation and expectation. By 8:10, the first tanks began rolling onto the bridge. The steel panels groaned under their weight, but the structure held. Infantry followed, crossing in tight formations, weapons at the ready. Engineers worked relentlessly, ensuring that each segment could support successive waves of troops and vehicles. The Germans, confronted with the reality of armored units appearing where no crossing should have existed, were forced into reactive maneuvers. Defensive fire became sporadic, then concentrated in desperate attempts to halt the advance. The riverbank was now a crucible of chaos. Smoke from burning vehicles mingled with the mist, obscuring movements and masking further American advances. The portable bridges had transformed the landscape, turning a natural obstacle into a conduit for attack. Every crossing reinforced the tactical advantage, allowing infantry to flank positions previously thought secure and artillery units to establish new firing positions. By 8:45, the initial crossing was complete. Engineers remained at the edges, reinforcing segments and preparing additional bridges downstream. The Americans had achieved what seemed impossible. They had neutralized a key defensive line under fire with minimal disruption to their offensive momentum. For German defenders, the moment marked the collapse of their carefully calculated river defense. Confidence waned, orders became fragmented, and the psychological strain of witnessing rapid, unstoppable progress began to dominate tactical thinking. The stage was set for the second phase of the engagement, reinforcing the crossing, exploiting the breach, and pushing deeper into enemy territory. What had begun as a river obstacle had transformed into a symbol of ingenuity, courage, and relentless momentum. By 9 o'clock, the Roar River crossing had become a theater of controlled chaos. American engineers, having completed the first bridge, were now constructing additional segments downstream to expand the crossing points. Infantry units surged across, taking advantage of the surprise and speed of the operation. Tanks and artillery followed in tight, disciplined formations, each vehicle testing the bridge's limits as it rolled across. The river, once a formidable barrier, now carried the full force of the U.S. offensive into German-held territory. German defenders scrambled to respond. Machine guns and mortars raked the riverbanks, but the Americans' coordinated suppressive fire and smoke cover reduced the effectiveness of these attacks. Officers barked orders, attempting to realign defensive lines, but the speed of the bridge deployment and the sheer audacity of the operation left them constantly reacting. Communication breakdowns and the fog of war compounded their confusion. Some units fired blindly, while others hesitated, uncertain of where the next wave of attackers would emerge. At 9:30, the first German counterattacks were launched. Infantry and small tank units moved toward the bridges, hoping to destroy them before more American troops could cross. Engineers on the riverbank, however, were ready. Sections were reinforced, and additional supports were secured under cover of smoke and covering fire. Tanks waiting to cross now provided indirect fire on German positions, while infantry units advanced on flanks, cutting off retreat and isolating strong points. The engagement reached its most intense moment around 10 o'clock. Artillery shells splashed into the river, sending waves over bridge sections. One armored vehicle wobbled dangerously as a nearby explosion shook the structure, but soldiers worked quickly to stabilize it, securing additional supports and guiding tanks safely across. Every movement was a balance of risk and precision. The Germans, witnessing the unyielding advance, began to retreat along the river's far bank, abandoning some positions to avoid encirclement. By 10:30, the crossing was fully operational. Multiple bridges spanned the river, allowing a continuous flow of troops, vehicles, and supplies. The U.S. forces had achieved total tactical superiority at this critical point, securing a foothold on the far bank and outflanking German defensive positions. Engineers, exhausted but unbroken, continued to maintain and reinforce the structures, aware that any collapse could endanger the momentum of the entire operation. The psychological impact was equally decisive. German soldiers, who had placed confidence in the river as a natural barrier, now faced the reality that their defensive advantage had been nullified. Morale plummeted as officers struggled to rally units, and small pockets of resistance dissolved under the relentless advance. Letters and post-war accounts from German troops later described the scene as surreal. American soldiers and armor seemingly defying the laws of physics, crossing waters that had long been thought impassable under enemy fire. By midday, the river crossing had shifted the local balance of power. U.S. forces were no longer confined to the banks. They had established multiple bridgeheads, poised to expand their offensive into the surrounding countryside. Commanders on both sides understood that this moment would define the next phase of operations. For the Americans, a springboard for continued advance. For the Germans, a crisis that required rapid adaptation under duress. The Ruhr River, once a symbol of natural defense and a potential choke point for attackers, had become a testament to ingenuity, courage, and meticulous coordination. The portable bridges had not only carried men and machines. They had carried the momentum of an army forward, transforming anticipation into action, fear into awe, and strategy into tangible success. With the crossing secured, attention would turn to the consequences, the casualties inflicted, the territory gained, and the lasting lessons for both sides. The story of the bridges was not over. It was about to ripple through the battlefield, shaping the aftermath of the engagement in ways that would echo far beyond the riverbanks. By late afternoon on January 17, 1945, the full impact of the Ruhr River crossing was becoming clear. American forces had secured multiple bridgeheads, allowing infantry, armor, and artillery units to pour across the once formidable barrier. The initial casualties among the engineers and infantry were notable, but far lower than anticipated, a testament to meticulous planning, disciplined execution, and the element of surprise. Estimates from U.S. Army reports later indicated that while small units suffered losses from artillery and small arms fire, the overall operation maintained a remarkably high survival rate given the circumstances. The German defenders, meanwhile, faced a stark reality. Their defensive positions along the river had been overrun or rendered ineffective. Commanders struggled to regroup units scattered along the banks. Some pockets of infantry attempted to mount counterattacks, but these were piecemeal, lacking coordination, and often repelled by entrenched American forces now positioned on the far side of the river. Morale suffered greatly. Letters and diaries from German soldiers describe a sense of disbelief and frustration. The river, their natural advantage, had been neutralized almost effortlessly by portable bridges. Strategically, the crossing marked a turning point for the local theater. The ability to transport heavy vehicles, tanks, and artillery across the Ruhr without delay allowed American commanders to maintain the momentum of their advance into Western Germany. Supply lines remained secure, and reinforcements could move rapidly to exploit breaches in German defenses. This prevented the Germans from consolidating forces or establishing new defensive positions, forcing them into a reactive posture that would shape subsequent battles. Reports from the field highlight the extraordinary performance of U.S. Army engineers. Major General Harry J. Maloney, commanding officer of the 12th Corps, praised the operation in official dispatches, noting that the speed and precision of the bridge deployments demonstrated the highest level of ingenuity and bravery under direct enemy fire. Engineers who had spent months in training finally saw their preparations validated on the battlefield. Their success was not only a tactical victory, but a morale booster for the entire division, reinforcing the trust between combat units and the support personnel who made their movements possible. The German perspective mirrored shock and strategic concern. Field reports captured the frustration of soldiers and officers alike. It was as if the rivers ceased to exist, wrote one lieutenant in a post-war memoir. Artillery units that had been positioned to dominate the banks found themselves firing at targets that had already crossed, unable to adjust in time. Even well-fortified machine gun positions were outflanked, forcing retreats and the abandonment of key defensive terrain. The psychological impact of witnessing such innovation was profound, shaping defensive tactics in the weeks that followed and highlighting the growing technological and operational advantage held by the Allies. While the immediate tactical success was evident, the crossing also served as a lesson in adaptability and coordination. Soldiers on both sides recognized that traditional assumptions about natural barriers and defensive lines could no longer be relied upon. The Americans had demonstrated that disciplined planning, engineering innovation, and decisive action under fire could redefine the battlefield in ways that were both immediate and far-reaching. As evening approached, the riverbanks quieted, though not entirely. Engineers continued to maintain bridges, infantry prepared for the next day's operations, and the first waves of tanks and supplies moved inland. The Roer River had been crossed, but the consequences of this daring maneuver were just beginning to ripple through both armies, setting the stage for continued operations and strategic shifts in the heart of Western Germany. In the days following the Roer River crossing, the full strategic consequences became evident. American forces, having established multiple bridgeheads, were able to expand their advance into Western Germany with unprecedented speed. The portability and rapid deployment of the bridges ensured that tanks and artillery could follow almost immediately, sustaining the momentum that had carried the infantry across the river. Supply convoys, ammunition, and reinforcements flowed without interruption, a logistical advantage that German forces struggled to counter. For the Germans, the crossing forced a reevaluation of defensive strategy. Commanders had counted on rivers to delay the Allies, assuming that natural obstacles, reinforced positions, and concentrated artillery would create choke points. The sudden appearance of portable bridges under fire nullified these assumptions. Retreats became more common, defensive lines had to be abandoned or repositioned hastily, and units were often outflanked before they could organize an effective response. German reports noted the disorientation and frustration experienced by troops watching Americans seemingly defy both natural barriers and defensive doctrine. The psychological impact of the crossing resonated beyond the immediate battle. American engineers were celebrated as heroes of ingenuity and precision. Their ability to construct operational bridges under fire boosted morale across entire divisions, reinforcing confidence in leadership and equipment. Soldiers gained trust in the idea that obstacles, no matter how formidable, could be overcome with preparation and teamwork. The successful operation became a blueprint for similar crossings in subsequent campaigns, influencing both planning and training for engineering units throughout the Allied forces. By late afternoon on January 17, 1945, the full impact of the Roer River crossing was becoming clear. American forces had secured multiple bridgeheads, allowing infantry, armor, and artillery units to pour across the once formidable barrier. The initial casualties among the engineers and infantry were notable, but far lower than anticipated, a testament to meticulous planning, disciplined execution, and the element of surprise. Estimates from U.S. Army reports later indicated that while small units suffered losses from artillery and small arms fire, the overall operation maintained a remarkably high survival rate given the circumstances. The German defenders, meanwhile, faced a stark reality. Their defensive positions along the river had been overrun or rendered ineffective. Commanders struggled to regroup units scattered along the banks. Some pockets of infantry attempted to mount counterattacks, but these were piecemeal, lacking coordination, and often repelled by entrenched American forces now positioned on the far side of the river. Morale suffered greatly. Letters and diaries from German soldiers describe a sense of disbelief and frustration. The river, their natural advantage, had been neutralized almost effortlessly by portable bridges. Strategically, the crossing marked a turning point for the local theater. The ability to transport heavy vehicles, tanks, and artillery across the Roer without delay allowed American commanders to maintain the momentum of their advance into Western Germany. Supply lines remained secure, and reinforcements could move rapidly to exploit breaches in German defenses. This prevented the Germans from consolidating forces or establishing new defensive positions, forcing them into a reactive posture that would shape subsequent battles. Reports from the field highlight the extraordinary performance of U.S. Army engineers. Major General Harry J. Maloney, commanding officer of the 12th Corps, praised the operation in official dispatches, noting that the speed and precision of the bridge deployments demonstrated the highest level of ingenuity and bravery under direct enemy fire. Engineers who had spent months in training finally saw their preparations validated on the battlefield. Their success was not only a tactical victory, but a morale booster for the entire division, reinforcing the trust between combat units and the support personnel who made their movements possible. The German perspective mirrored shock and strategic concern. Field reports captured the frustration of soldiers and officers alike. It was as if the river ceased to exist, wrote one lieutenant in a post-war memoir. Artillery units that had been positioned to dominate the banks found themselves firing at targets that had already crossed, unable to adjust in time. Even well-fortified machine gun positions were outflanked, forcing retreats and the abandonment of key defensive terrain. The psychological impact of witnessing such innovation was profound, shaping defensive tactics in the weeks that followed and highlighting the growing technological and operational advantage held by the Allies. While the immediate tactical success was evident, the crossing also served as a lesson in adaptability and coordination. Soldiers on both sides recognized that traditional assumptions about natural barriers and defensive lines could no longer be relied upon. The Americans had demonstrated that disciplined planning, engineering innovation, and decisive action under fire could redefine the battlefield in ways that were both immediate and far-reaching. As evening approached, the riverbanks quieted, though not entirely. Engineers continued to maintain bridges. Infantry prepared for the next day's operations, and the first waves of tanks and supplies moved inland. The Roer River had been crossed, but the consequences of this daring maneuver were just beginning to ripple through both armies, setting the stage for continued operations and strategic shifts in the heart of Western Germany. In the days following the Roer River crossing, the full strategic consequences became evident. American forces, having established multiple bridgeheads, were able to expand their advance into Western Germany with unprecedented speed. The portability and rapid deployment of the bridges ensured that tanks and artillery could follow almost immediately, sustaining the momentum that had carried the infantry across the river. Supply convoys, ammunition, and reinforcements flowed without interruption, a logistical advantage that German forces struggled to counter. For the Germans, the crossing forced a reevaluation of defensive strategy. Commanders had counted on rivers to delay the Allies, assuming that natural obstacles, reinforced positions, and concentrated artillery would create choke points. The sudden appearance of portable bridges under fire nullified these assumptions. Retreats became more common. Defensive lines had to be abandoned or repositioned hastily, and units were often outflanked before they could organize an effective response. German reports noted the disorientation and frustration experienced by troops watching Americans seemingly defy both natural barriers and defensive doctrine. The psychological impact of the crossing resonated beyond the immediate battle. American engineers were celebrated as heroes of ingenuity and precision. Their ability to construct operational bridges under fire boosted morale across entire divisions, reinforcing confidence in leadership and equipment. Soldiers gained trust in the idea that obstacles, no matter how formidable, could be overcome with preparation and teamwork. The successful operation became a blueprint for similar crossings in subsequent campaigns, influencing both planning and training for engineering units throughout the Allied forces. From a German perspective, the operation served as a sobering example of how technological innovation and coordinated execution could destabilize traditional defensive thinking. Diaries and after-action reports from German soldiers highlighted a recurring theme: disbelief at the efficiency and audacity of the Americans. Officers recognized that river defenses alone could no longer guarantee control over terrain. In some units, morale was significantly weakened, leading to hesitation in later engagements. Historians later noted that such psychological setbacks, while subtle, contributed to the cumulative erosion of German defensive effectiveness in the Western theater. The operation also carried broader operational consequences. By establishing secure crossings, American forces were able to maintain a continuous offensive, preventing the Germans from regrouping along secondary defensive lines. Engineers continued to expand and reinforce bridge networks, enabling future operations to proceed with minimal delay. These successes underscored the importance of battlefield innovation, integration of engineering with combat units, and the value of precise execution under extreme pressure. Ultimately, the Roer River crossing demonstrated that battlefield success was as much about ingenuity and adaptability as it was about firepower. The audacity of deploying portable bridges under enemy fire not only neutralized a critical defensive barrier, but also reshaped the perception of what was possible in combat. German soldiers, witnessing the collapse of their carefully planned river defenses, faced both tangible losses and a profound psychological shock, a testament to the impact of innovation under pressure. As the sun set over the riverbanks, the immediate battle concluded, but the lessons of the day echoed far beyond the roar. The courage of the engineers, the precision of the troops, and the audacity of the operation had forged a decisive advantage. The story of the portable bridges was no longer just a technical achievement. It had become a defining moment of human resolve and ingenuity in the face of war. The Roer River crossing stands as a testament to human ingenuity under the harshest conditions. In the midst of war, when fear and uncertainty are constant companions, a small group of soldiers transformed a natural barrier into an opportunity. Engineers, armed with little more than steel, tools, and relentless determination, demonstrated that innovation and courage could redefine the battlefield. The portable bridges were not just structures of metal. They were symbols of discipline, planning, and the belief that no obstacle was insurmountable. For the soldiers who crossed, The experience left a lasting impression. Infantry, tanks, and artillery moved with confidence, trusting in the precision of their engineers. Each crossing reinforced a sense of unity and purpose. That success in war often depends on the seamless integration of human skill and technological innovation. For the Germans who witnessed it, disbelief turned into a sobering realization that warfare was evolving rapidly. Natural defenses, once relied upon, could be rendered meaningless by ingenuity and coordinated action. Beyond the immediate tactical victory, the operation reshaped how both sides approached obstacles. The Allies recognized the value of adaptable engineering, integrating portable solutions into future campaigns. The Germans, confronted with unprecedented methods, were forced to reconsider their defensive assumptions. The crossing at the Roer River exemplified the interplay between technology, human resolve, and the psychology of combat. A reminder that innovation can alter not only the outcome of a single battle, but the broader course of a campaign. In the quiet moments after the fighting, as soldiers rested along the riverbanks and engineers maintained their bridges, the full significance became clear. This was more than a military success. It was a demonstration of creativity, courage, and perseverance under pressure. The story of the portable bridges under fire endures as a reminder that, even amid the devastation of war, human ingenuity can turn obstacles into opportunities and fear into decisive action. The Roer River, once a formidable barrier, had been bridged, not just by steel, but by the determination and skill of men who refused to be stopped.